If he were any cooler, he'd still be frozen, baby. We are the Spy-Fi guys, and this is Austin Powers. Welcome to the Spy-Fi guys, where we cover spy facts, spy fiction, and everything in between. I'm Zach.
Christian.
And welcome back to our Swinging 60s Spy Summer. All this summer, we've been breaking with our usual formula to cover exclusively fictional spy movies and TV shows made or set during the golden age of spy cinema, the 1960s. So grab your go-go boots and put on your ascot because it's still time to get groovy.
And today we have a special guest, returning guest star. Does this make you like recurring guest star now in our credits?
Yes.
She's semi-recurring. You may remember her from Sergeant Stubby, an American Hero. It's Sarah.
Hi.
So today we're talking about Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery, the first Austin Powers movie starring Mike Meyers, among other people.
I think this is the only one where he's only playing two characters, or all the other ones he's playing many more characters. But I thought we'd go with this one, yeah, because it's very 60s.
So I had a lot of memories of this one. It suffers from what I call the Borat effect, where I remember kids in high school just saying lines from it or shouting lines from it endlessly. And as it turned out, the lines they were all saying were actually from a sequel, not from.
So have you never seen this one before?
I have not seen this one.
Wow. All right.
Oh.
Sarah, have you'd seen this before or no?
Yes. When I was a kid, I guess, I saw it. But at the time, I wasn't familiar with the source material.
Mm-hmm.
So I hadn't seen Bond. And so I just thought it was a really, really terrible, not funny, stupid movie. Rewatching it now that I am more familiar with the source material, not nearly as familiar as either of you, granted. But I have seen some Bond movies. I still think it was largely a stupid movie, but I did quite enjoy when it was a direct parody of Bond things. Yeah. So when they have almost the identical lines from Bond and then just tweak it slightly, or the really outlandish, like straight parody things, I liked that.
I saw the first 20 minutes of this as part of like a school trip to the movies out in 4th grade until my teacher realized it was completely inappropriate and we should go.
You saw it in like a theater?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I saw it on a bus trip, like a school bus trip, and someone put it on the bus. I'm pretty sure that's how I saw it. Yeah.
By the time that first time, I didn't actually know all the Bond tropes, but by the second time, when I watched it all the way through, that's when I knew a lot of the Bond tropes, so I got a lot of those references. Was very amused by them. But why don't we get into the movie?
Sure. So here is the one-sentence summary of this movie. A 1960s secret agent is brought out of cryo-freeze to oppose his greatest enemy in the 1990s, where his social attitudes are glaringly out of place.
One run-on long sentence.
A little bit. And I'd say his social attitudes is a little bit misleading. It's really just his attitude towards women.
No. Well, we'll get into it. We'll get into it. Let's see. We start with 1967 outside Las Vegas. In an underground lair, we have Dr. Evil looking very, very Blofeld-esque with the cat, the bald head. We don't see his face. And he's gathered, the world's deadliest assassins who somehow, even though they're the world's deadliest assassins, they have had trouble assassinating Austin Powers. And to punish them, he starts pushing buttons and killing them off, just like in Thunderball.
That is it from a James Bond movie. I was wondering about that.
Yeah, it's this organization does not tolerate failure. Push a button, and then in Thunderball, it's just one person who gets the hot seat. But yeah, it's literally a direct homage.
So something I was wondering is this an SNL movie?
Oh, because it's got Mike Meyers and Will Ferrell?
That's right. When I saw Will Ferrell, that's when it jumped out to me as a possibility. But I don't think it is.
Arguably, the movie starts maybe a couple of seconds before with the music, because as soon as the music came on in the credits, it's like, oh, God, I hate this music.
Wait, are you talking about the Austin Powers theme?
Yes.
No, wait. It doesn't start with the...
It fades in to the credits with Austin Powers-y 60s music. And I don't have a problem with 60s music, but as we faded into this movie, I thought immediately, oh yeah, dang, I hate this. Why am I watching this?
I had the exact
then-
opposite reaction to the music because I'm like, ooh, it feels very like 60s Bond, and I liked it.
It was vindicated slightly when I saw a really cute cat. So going from a timeline perspective in my notes, I wrote, hate this music, and then cute cat.
He doesn't kill all of the assassins. He leaves two of them, Mustafa, played by Will Ferrell, and Frau Farbissina, who, I don't remember the actress's name for that, but is basically a cross between, what is it, one of the villains from Russia with Love, whose name escapes me off the top of my head. Another villain from On Her Majesty's Secret Service, whose name, basically, it's this like older German woman stereotype kind of thing.
And I think Will Ferrell is wearing some kind of brown face.
Yeah,
You guys notice that?
He's playing a character named Mustafa, so yes.
Yes, I wondered if he was supposed to be Gaddafi based on his offensive hat. But I also probably should have marked the number of times that there were things in this movie that did not age well and would definitely not be in a movie today.
Yeah,
I think
there's a lot.
brown face probably is one of them. Yeah.
But so he saves Mustafa and Frau Farbissina. He needs them to help him kill Austin Powers. And from there, we go right into our credits scene with Austin Powers playing the iconic soul bossa nova music, with him dancing all around swinging 60s London.
So was this a reference to something where they're like dancing in the streets?
I feel like it's a Beatles reference.
Well, the part where he runs away from the mob of women is clearly from A Hard Day's Night.
Okay,
but I was kind of referring to everything else.
I think it's just snapshots of a stereotypical 60s, like swinging 60s London.
Yeah.
The clothing and everything else, yeah.
So I know already talked about the music, but to me, the music is like an earworm. Like it goes into your brain and won't leave. And it's so associated with Austin Powers that as soon as you hear it, you're immediately in the world. And I didn't hate it like Sarah did, but I also didn't love it like Christian did. So I guess I'm sort of somewhere in the middle. It just was set the tone really well.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely visceral. And that probably comes from, me seeing as a kid, not knowing the source material and having everyone constantly quote it.
That's fair.
So I think that's probably why I had that reaction.
Yeah. Well, so at the end of that long sequence, which includes like him, leading a brass band and dancing with London cops, otherwise known as bobbies, he flips into his Jaguar and meets with Mrs. Kensington, played by Mimi Rogers. The fact that she's Mrs. Kensington is a reference to Mrs. Peel up from the Avengers show, from the British Avengers. And Zach, did you recognize the ringtone when there's a phone call?
Was it the In Like Flint ringtone?
It was the In Like Flint ringtone.
Yeah, I also had to say about Mrs. Kensington that she also has the Mrs. Peel like leather catsuit outfit.
Yep.
That is also from the Avengers.
So we get a call from Basil Exposition, who's basically our RM character.
I loved that his name was Exposition.
Yep.
That brought me such joy because he was the exposition fairy, and I think without him there probably would be no plot. Like he just popped in every once in a while, gave really quick exposition. Hey, Austin Powers, you have to go break into this thing. And then, very long scene of him doing that. Yeah, I love his name as Exposition.
And his name, Exposition, sounds like it could almost be like a real name.
I mean, if
you don't think of that too
can
hard.
be a real name, sure, Exposition can. So we next have, he tells us that Dr. Evil's planning a trap at the Electric Psychedelic Pussycat Swingers Club here in swinging London.
And he calls it a swinging shindig.
Yeah, so they get to the club, which has a big boy statue on top of it. Have you guys ever been to a big boy?
Aren't those from the Fallout games?
No.
Yes, that's where I've seen them. I've seen them in the Fallout games. I knew I recognized them from somewhere.
That actually exists. They're a chain of restaurants, just like diners.
It seems very American. I was surprised to see it in London.
That's a great point. I don't know. They go to the club. Nice musical interlude. But
it's called like Peppermint and something. And the credits. You definitely recognized if you heard it.
Incense, peppermints, yeah.
Yeah.
You notice Andy Warhol in the club?
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, so they're trying to strategize what to do. Waitress is coming to take Austin's drink, and he punches the waitress out. But
Yes.
twist, the waitress is a man in disguise and is one of Dr. Evil's assassins.
So it's okay that Austin hit her.
I was going to say, for those keeping track of things that I don't think would be in movies now, the mildly transphobic "that's no woman, that's a man" line, I think would probably make the cut.
Yeah.
What about the violence against women? That's not great either.
No, it's not.
Even if it turns out not to be, yeah.
So they disarm him, are about to get him to talk when Dr. Evil kills the assassin and runs away.
And it looks like it's clearly not Mike Myers, by the way, who's like doing those physical movements.
He runs into a cryogenic freezing chamber and takes off in the big boy, which is secretly a rocket.
I did like that the cryogenic chamber said like cryogenic beginning or something like that. And it was stuck on with stickers. Like it says beginning permanently on the outside. So I thought that was kind of funny.
And we next go to 30 years later. So 1997. I don't want to think about how long ago that was.
Yeah, no, the year when greed and corruption ruled again. I thought that was funny, especially looking back from in a post-2020 world, looking back at 1997 as the year of greed and corruption.
1997 was the height of the American Empire, basically.
So we go to a NORAD tracking station. They've seen the big boy rocket, and it disappears over Nevada, which, if you remember, is where Dr. Evil's secret lair was. So now this American general who was in charge of the NORAD station says he has to go to London, and we cut to London, the Ministry of Defense. Find out that Austin Powers volunteered to be frozen, which, did this remind you of In Like Flint, Zach?
Yes, all of this stuff with the cryo freeze. So Sarah, you missed it. Basically, the bad guys sort of say to our hero, think of it, Mr. Flint. You could be immortal. You could live forever. Cryo freeze. And he's just not having it. He's like, sounds stupid. But something I wanted to say about this is I wanted to see the part where he volunteers to get frozen.
For the sake of moving the plot along, I was okay with not seeing it.
From a storytelling perspective, I would have rather known why Dr. Evil decided to freeze himself for seemingly an arbitrary amount of time. Like, why couldn't he just have escaped in the 60s? Why did he freeze himself? Why did he freeze himself specifically for 30 years? None of that is actually explained, but that's okay.
It's explained because he knew by that time greed and corruption would rule again.
Of course.
Well, maybe he thought Austin Powers would be too old to foil him.
Maybe. That makes sense, too.
And I don't mean to keep harping on why Austin froze himself, but if his goal was to fight Dr. Evil, I never got the sense that he disliked Dr. Evil that much.
That's his sworn nemesis.
But they say that, but they don't show it.
Well, again, it's really just trading in on that Bond vibe where, he's the world's greatest super spy. This is the world's greatest villain. So if you have that context already, you don't need to be told anymore.
That's true. It's never really personal for Bond, I get the impression. Not even in License to Kill.
Okay, but on Her Majesty's Secret Service?
Okay, fine. That's an exception. But let's move on.
And all of the Blofeld stuff, like basically all of the Connery movies besides Goldfinger and Dr. No, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, so let's move on. So Austin is held in the Celebrity Vault, and I noticed the only two other people in the Celebrity Vault you see are Gary Coleman and Vanilla Ice.
I did laugh at Vanilla Ice being in there. The double ice joke, I thought that was good.
Yeah.
Oh, I just got that.
Not great.
So they start the unfreezing process, and there are 5 stages of the process: the laser cutting phase, the warm liquid goo phase, reanimation phase, cleansing phase, and evacuation.
So before I say bad things about this scene, I first want to say that it's funny when the Russian intelligence guy was there, and Austin Powers has this 60s mindset where we're still in the Cold War. He's like, Russian intelligence.
So that's not till later.
Oh, damn it. Okay, I'll save that comment for later. That pretend.
Well, the only thing I have between then and now is the peeing joke, aka the evacuation phase.
This movie does this a lot, where they harp on one joke for a really long time, and it's essentially the same joke about 5 times. And I think it works once near the end of the movie, but I think they only should have done it once. So we see him pee for like 5 minutes. And then later we see Will Ferrell die for like 5 minutes. Like we see them laugh maniacally towards the UN for like 5 minutes. We don't need, I think, every joke to be elongated like that. I would have liked
what they're going on is the premise that it's funny and then it gets tiresome, but then it goes on for so long that it becomes funny again.
I mean, I appreciate that that's what they were trying to do, but they did it a lot.
I'm sure in 1997 it was new and brilliant, but after 15 seasons of Family Guy, like something mildly funny that goes on for a really long time has been done to death.
Anyway, so we move on to when he's reanimated, apparently, and yes, so not only is there British intelligence because it's the Ministry of Defense, the American intelligence, but there's Russian intelligence. He's like, "Are you mad?" Basil's like, "Cold War's over," and it's like, "Oh, well, finally those capitalist pigs will pay for their crimes, eh, comrade? Eh?" I like that line.
Also, looking back at the 1997, a lot has changed since the 60s, and now we're friends with the Russians. Well, a lot has changed since 1997, and now we are not friends with the Russians.
Yeah.
The Russian general, this part, you may recognize him as he was Peter Parker's landlord in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies.
And he's in a lot of stuff.
I watched it with Alana, my sister, who you may remember from Spy Kids, and this was her favorite part, when he thinks the Russians have won the Cold War.
Yes, but obviously Basil explains, "No, we won." And he's like, "Ooh, yay, capitalism."
That's our man, very loyal.
Yeah. They bring Austin up to speed, and he'll be working with Miss Kensington, who is Mrs. Kensington's daughter, and she's played by Elizabeth Hurley.
So they did this in Casino Royale. So Sarah, I know you have not seen the old Casino Royale, but they do the same joke where old James Bond comes from retirement. He's like, "Moneypenny, you look great. You haven't aged a day." And she's like, "I'm Moneypenny's daughter." It's really awkward. Also, I can't believe Miss Kensington has like a normal name and not some kind of crazy parody or some kind of sexual innuendo name. I know we get one later.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Her job is to acclimatize Austin to the 90s, and wow, that's a terrible job. I'm so sorry.
And this is where we get our first Austin being creepy. Or maybe an understatement.
Yep.
Anything anybody want to say about that?
I have many thoughts. And that's about his treatment towards this character in general and towards women in general. When he tries and fails to have a romantic relationship, let's say, with this character, and she says no, and then sort of looks and smiles to the camera really coyly, I have a huge problem with that because it perpetuates this myth that when women say no, we mean yes. And I think that was also very popular sort of conceit in the 90s. And part of the reason that I remember disliking this movie was because of the way that the main character treats women. Now, I understand that it is parodying James Bond, and a lot of the stuff that he does is directly taken from James Bond movies, but I have a problem with the way that James Bond does it too. The way he treats what's-her-face, the pussy galore, vagina, whatever her name is.
A lot of vagina.
Yes. His whole relationship with her is, I know, directly taken from Bond, but it's still, I don't think it sufficiently condemns it enough in its parody. I think it just sort of straight takes it, and I don't think it condemns it.
I understand that this movie is supposed to be funny, and the joke is that and no, I understand it's supposed to be a running joke through the movie that although he's really gross and really creepy and really unattractive, women keep falling for him anyway. But it's not that funny, and repeating it over and over through the movie doesn't make it funnier. So
it's really only in the beginning in the 60s where we have that, whereas in the throughout the 90s, other than a lot of vagina, no one else.
And the fembots.
The fembots. He does a very long, easily 3 to 7 minute dance.
Let's get to there. That's a long time. So let's get through the movie.
Okay,
fine.
We have him picking up his personal effects. I like the joke where he's picking up is that for danger powers. No, danger's my middle name. Like
it literally is. Yes.
I mean, I enjoyed the joke, and so. This is the first appearance of the Swedish-made penis enlarger. I liked that for some reason because it's Swedish made, it had a tiny Swedish flag on it.
Sure.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah.
Oh, it was hard to miss, but yes.
I was maybe trying not to look.
Maybe face palming.
Yeah.
And again, this is another one of those cases where maybe the joke goes on too long. Like, especially my favorite part of this is where he says to Vanessa, "Sort of thing isn't my bag, baby." And then one book, Swedish made penis enlarges, and me, this sort of thing is my bag, baby. I thought that was a funny joke.
It's funny. It doesn't make much sense that he'd be ashamed of it, but he wrote a book about it.
Yeah.
But whatever.
Yeah.
Don't think about it too hard.
And so they go off onto his private jet, which is a 747 or 737, and we get the first of these, like, I call them the groovy transitions, where it's like him and a band, and it's very psychedelic looking, and I enjoyed those, and the music is appropriately, groovy enough.
Does Bond do that? Did I miss?
No.
Did I miss that?
I think that's like I haven't seen A Hard Day's Night, but I feel like that's a product of that era.
I don't remember that in A Hard Day's Night. That doesn't mean it didn't happen.
They serve the same function as the bat signal flying in and out in Batman 66.
Yeah.
That's true.
So we next go to Dr. Evil's underground lair. He's been unfrozen as well. Unfortunately, there are feline complications in the unfreezing process, and Mr. Bigglesworth, his cat, is now one of those creepy naked cats.
Yeah, I hated that. You didn't like it either, Sarah?
I did not. Stop abusing cats. Thanks.
Even as a joke. So we already talked about this. Is they kill Will Ferrell?
Yeah,
they take their sweet time doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
I'd like that joke. I'm just gonna say it.
Okay, I like it better than the peeing
because it keeps going on, and then when they said you think it's done, when he says you shot me, and you think it's done, you shot me in the arm. So it went long enough, and then became funny again. So this is where we get introduced to everyone. Frau Farbissina, we find out she founded the militant arm of the Salvation Army. Random Task, who's an odd job ripoff, but instead of a hat, he throws a shoe. And then we get Patty O'Brien, who's a terrible Irish stereotype. Well, I don't know, Zach, what do you think about this joke about the Lucky Charms?
It was great until they explained it.
Yeah, I liked it when he said they're after me Lucky Charms. I was like, all right. But then they laughed for like 7 minutes, and then they explained it. We were so close to it being funny.
Yeah, I would have had him say it, have them laugh, have him be like, what? And then just cut,
And then we also get introduced to Dr. Evil's number 2 man, number 2, who has an eye patch, who's basically just Emilio Largo from Thunderball. So he runs VirtueCon, which is the legitimate face of the evil empire. During those 30 years, changed from volatile chemicals to telecommunications.
And it's not a con.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe it's just because I'm kind of a geek, but when I heard VirtueCon, I was like, oh, that sounds like a fun convention that maybe I want to go to.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's a little bit of both.
Favorite joke here was where they have like the map of the U.S. and all the different places they have shipping and production companies and factories. And one of the last ones, and a factory in wherever that builds models of factories.
I did like that, yes.
And that's a direct call to Diamonds. I'm not going to name every one of these like direct, but like the ones that really stood out to me. Like,
okay,
it's a plot point in Diamonds Are Forever where Blofeld's taken over someone else's corporation and has like the little model, like literal models of the factories, and then they figure out that wait, and something in Baja California. I was like, what? I don't have anything in Baja California. And so we have this. Dr. Evil explains his plans. I like this joke. So he has a scheme to blackmail Prince Charles to make it appear that he's had an affair and they have to divorce.
Yeah, how well do you remember your 90s current events?
I mean, their divorce, that was a pretty big thing. I remember that. The next is to create a hole in the ozone layer, which I'm sure everyone remembers that.
Very 90s reference, talking about the hole in the ozone.
Well, and of course, this scene has some of the most famous Dr. Evil lines of all time.
$1 million.
Throw me a freaking bone here.
Oh, that too, yeah. But they decide to do an old fallback of, all right, steal a nuke and hold the world for ransom, which is exactly what they did in Thunderball.
That's great. The fact that it's like their backup plan really amused me.
I was watching this with Carolyn, who listeners may remember from our Sergeant Stubby podcast. And once he said $1 million, and she was actually, before number 2 said anything, she was like, wait, that's it? I was like, wait for it. Yeah, so next we go to Austin's jumbo jet. Vanessa and him are the only ones on this plane.
Red flag.
I didn't even think about it when I said it that way, but sure.
Orange light.
She's having him sign some release forms, which will basically indemnify the Ministry of Defense in case he does something spectacularly stupid, apparently. And of course, this is when he tries to seduce Vanessa again, and she shuts him down again. And then there's the spinning bed, which I feel like was from something we watched, Zach. Do you remember this?
Well, Casino Royale had all kinds of sexy beds.
Right.
So that's probably it.
I feel like it was either that or in like Flint, where there was a spinning bed, but I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah, one of those. Yeah. He also has a line here, why don't we go in the back and shag? I think it like comes out of nowhere too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. I think he's asking about her background. How did you end up working for MOD? And then he just goes into that. And yeah.
Mm-hmm. But to Vanessa's credit, she like kind of chews him out here.
Yeah, and I appreciated that.
And also earlier we skipped it, but she says at one point, "Hey, stop calling me baby." I mean, he doesn't listen, but that was helpful. But like Sarah said, she still thinks that he's charming. It's obvious because she like smiles to herself.
So next we go back to the evil lair. This is when we meet Scott, aka Zach's doppelganger, or celebrity
people
doppelganger.
Keep saying I look like them.
I can see. Carolyn did not see it.
I really can only see it in this movie, I think.
Well, he's pretty young in this movie, so that he's probably closer in age to where you are now, I would imagine. No, you don't think so? How old is he now?
I have no...
I have no idea how old he is.
Let's find out how old... Oh, we're talking about
Seth Green, by the way.
Yeah. Who it was.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. Seth Green is currently 46.
Yeah, so he's probably younger than I am now when he was in this movie.
Yeah. But yeah, we find out that they froze Dr. Evil Seaman, and when it looked like he wasn't going to return, they made not a clone. That's not the next movie. They made him a son. And Scott is a, punk rockish kind of guy. Is like very, very rightfully, 90s. But also rightfully saying, you just show up here and you expect a relationship? I hate you.
Yeah, the I hate you felt very Anakin Skywalker.
I can see that. Also, this is when Dr. Evil very awkwardly dances the Macarena, speaking of 90s references.
Mm-hmm.
We are almost as far from when this movie came out as Austin was frozen.
Oh, man.
Wait, is that right?
97, almost. So that's 2021. Yeah, almost. It's like 24 years. Yeah.
I also like the part where Dr. Evil's trying to hug Scott and they're like keep running away. I think I liked all the scenes with Dr. Evil more than I did the ones with Austin.
Fair. All right, so next we go to the jet landing in Las Vegas, and to me this looked like Las Vegas as I remember it from one of the first times I visited. I've been to Vegas a lot. And this is very like old Vegas, like the strip didn't quite look like the strip yet. It was a lot of downtown Vegas. So not so much your like, but not so much the days where you have like the themed casino hotels, like your circus or not circus, your Luxors or your Caesar's Palaces or anything else, but more of just the old mainly just a casino kind of thing.
Oh yeah. So also this part we have more aggressive flirting. And then he's like, I'm just joking, baby. It's just a joke. It's like, yeah, right.
Yeah, so they're using the time-tested cover of Being a Married Couple, which, of course, is huge. Of, this is why we only have one bed and one share a room. Yeah,
the old move.
Yeah. And as they're unpacking, I like this joke where, first she has like she unpacks a very small, some sort of bread or something. And then he unpacks a PPK, and then she has like a giant desert eagle.
Yeah, or as this Call of Duty players call it, a deagle.
A deagle, yeah.
Which, of course, is like a penis envy joke. Ha ha, very progressive.
So they go down into the casino floor. Apparently, VirtueCon's executives have been gambling at the different tables. And so they spot number 2. And did you recognize who was the dealer at the table?
Yes, the soup Nazi.
Yeah.
I have that written down.
I appreciated in this scene how Austin Powers receives a briefing about his target, like as they're walking up to him 20 seconds before.
Yeah.
That's
So-
how he rolls, baby.
And this is where we meet our Pussy Galore analog, a lot of vagina.
Mhm.
Classic Bond style gambling scene, except Austin Powers has no idea what he's doing.
Yes.
So they're playing blackjack. Number 2 has 17 and he decides to hit. And he says, I like to live dangerously. With his fancy eye patch, he knows the next card's going to be a 4. And so he gets 21. Whereas Austin has 5 and stands on 5 because he too likes to live dangerously.
Right.
And
A very
loses
famous
badly. But I will say, I have actually, in a casino, I have hit on 17. And I said the line, and it worked.
Whoa, look at you. So I guess the idea here is that it's sort of like with women, Austin Powers has no idea what he's doing, but manages to succeed anyway.
Yeah. Also, I enjoyed the ridiculous cover names, which they clearly hadn't decided on beforehand. Richie Cunningham and my wife, Oprah.
But it's like, would he even know who Oprah is? Don't worry about it.
No. No, definitely not. Number 2 goes to the restroom, and Austin follows him, and then number 2 disappears. We don't see where he goes. But this is where we get basically the main reason that number 2's name was number 2, for a poop joke.
Oh yeah, I would expect nothing less from this movie. Though, okay, so Austin Powers is following number 2, goes to the bathroom, can't find him. This Texan guy comes in, and then Austin Powers goes into the bathroom and starts to use the toilet out of, I can only assume, sheer awkwardness and just wanting to get away from the Texan guy.
Oh yeah. Well, the Texan guy was funny. It was because what is it? He's like sees him and he's like, oh, that's some outfit. Are you in the show? And he's like, no, I'm English. Oh, I'm so sorry. As Austin is using the bathroom, Patty O'Brien pops out from a secret compartment behind the toilet and uses the Lucky Charm bracelet to choke Austin with like a garrote, which reminded me of From Russia with Love.
Well, don't they play like some kind of musical sting here that's from James Bond?
No, but it's something that sounds very similar to a James Bond sting.
Okay. My question here is, how did they know which stall he was going to use when they planned this assassination attempt?
I assume there's some sort of camera or mirror somewhere.
And then every stall has like a vent over it that he can pop out of?
Sure.
If that makes you feel better to believe that.
Yeah, I shouldn't put too much thought into this movie, right?
Austin dispatches of Patty O'Brien by giving him a swirly. And next we cut to Dr. Evil in the secret lair. Somehow they've stolen the warhead from Kirkplakistan. We never see how, which I was a little disappointed by. And so then he goes to call the UN secret meeting room to tell them he was holding them for ransom. And we have like every stereotype of every kind of country in there, including a sumo wrestler.
I like the bagpiper.
I liked the guards outside of Buckingham Palace were also there.
Oh, the beef eaters, yeah.
Yes.
And then there's the other actor from Seinfeld is here.
Oh,
there's
yeah.
another actor. I don't know who he was.
I forget who he is in Seinfeld, but yes, he's there. He's the head of the UN. This is one of my favorite lines is the Mr. Evil, Dr. Evil. I didn't go to 7 years of evil medical school to be called Mr. Thank you very much.
So I'd heard that in other contexts, but I didn't realize that this is where it like originated.
In what other context is there to say that line?
Well, like, I think I read like a parody of the Fantastic Four where Dr. Doom is like, don't call me Mr. Doom. I didn't go to evil medical school for 20 years or whatever to be called Mr. Doom. So, stuff like that.
All right. And they do their evil laugh.
Right.
And it just goes on. And then it just slows down to just a little... But here's my question. So we have Dr. Evil, we have number 2, and we have Frau Verbista. Who are the like 4 other people who laugh with them?
It's about to ask that same question. It's like a bunch of other random people.
Yeah, including like some like mobsters, maybe a Yakuza guy. I don't know. Like this is the only time we ever see them.
Mm-hmm.
We next go to Vanessa in the hotel room the next day. She's calling her mom, who has barely aged. Like, I like that there's like maybe a streak of gray hair. Just to say that, oh, it's been 30 years.
Yeah, and this scene, they failed the Bechdel test pretty hard.
Yeah.
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 Oh, they do.
They talk for like 5 minutes, and the only thing they talk about is Austin Powers.
Yeah, I think the entire purpose of that scene is how much of him naked are we going to get to see joke?
Yep.
I think.
It's a lot of sight gags of, especially with the sausage placement and
Right.
Austin and Vanessa are scouting out VirtueCon HQ in Vegas, and he notices Dr. Evil's cat, which is how he knows that Dr. Evil's there. And he has like this ridiculous giant telephoto lens, shooting photos of Vanessa and saying, I'm gonna take you out night on the town, which leads me to my big question of, all right, so they go on this big date night. Aren't they supposed to be spying? What the hell are they doing?
It makes no sense. I agree.
I wondered whether the green screen behind the car when they were driving is that intentionally supposed to look really bad? Like, is that part of the joke, or is it just that it's been 25 years and looking back, everything in the 90s looks bad?
When they're driving and there's like that, it's not even green. Well, it's green screen now, but what they used to do is rear projection. So like, especially in Dr. No, Zach, you'll remember this. When there's those scenes of Sean Connery driving that car, it looks bad. And so it's intentionally supposed, like, another movie that does this to the same effect is Down with Love, the Ewan McGregor and Renee Zellweger movie. Anytime that they show them driving, they have that same effect because it's supposed to be like in the 60s.
Yeah, I think by the 90s they figured out how to put a camera in a car correctly, so they didn't actually need to use it. But I do appreciate that.
Yeah. But yeah, so they spend a night out in the town. They go in a double-decker bus because, of course, he's English. And have the one and only Burt Bacharach playing What the World Needs Now is Love, Sweet Love. What's the actual, I think it's just What the World Needs Now is the title. And they dance, and they have that very like 60s montage where they're definitely green screened, and it's like just them in the middle, and there's all the scenes around them happening because they apparently didn't have the budget to have them actually go to do different things.
Reminds me of the part in Stubby where they go out on the town in Paris or whatever.
No, but that you actually see them at the very or was it only postcards that you see? I don't remember now. And there's one of those jokes where it sounds like they're having sex, but no, they're just playing Twister.
A classic
like
game
you do
that you play with your coworkers. Classic.
Right.
But then this is where we get like Austin Powers' stairs joke. Like, I remember this being a big thing right after this movie. I don't know, like, did this come from here, or was this like a thing before then?
I think it's just a thing, but they do it best.
Yeah, because there was the stairs, there was the escalator, the elevator, and then for some reason, canoe.
He did a good job. He's good control over his leg muscles.
I feel like, so there's a scene in Goldfinger where when he's captured and there's a guard outside the door, and he does something similar to this, except doesn't call out explicitly that I'm going downstairs. And I'm wondering, was this inspired by that, or was it just a thing? I don't know.
Yeah. So also in this scene, they talk about their relationship, and Austin has this very strange line where he's like, "I'm sorry" to Vanessa, and she's like, "I'm sorry about what?" He says, "I'm sorry that bug up your ass had to die for you to have a good time."
Yeah.
Like, yo, dude.
I also think, is that an intentional mixed metaphor? Because he does that later when he says, 2 seconds later.
Oh, that train has sailed.
Yes, the train has sailed, which I didn't pick up on as being funny at the time, but instantly my boyfriend turned to me and whispered, "That train has sailed," and I laughed. So you didn't laugh it. He said it better. What can I say?
Okay, all right. Also, this is the scene where Vanessa's very drunk, and the one thing, one part of his attitude towards women is that he won't sleep with a drunk woman.
I did appreciate that.
Yeah,
I appreciated that.
Also, I liked his me in a nutshell joke.
Yeah.
This is so stupid, but whatever.
It was stupid enough that it was funny. And then we next get another call from Basil, this time on a laptop, but same ringtone, on America Online. I like.
Yes.
Yeah, this movie is much about artifacts of the 60s as it is of the 90s at this point. So you find out
that a VHS shows up. Yeah.
Right.
The old laptop, yeah.
So we find out that somehow Basil, because he's exposition, knows about Project Vulcan, and he says to get more info, sneak into a lot of Vagina's apartment. So he goes, sneaks in. I'm trying to remember if this is a real hotel, the Imperial Palace.
Sounds real.
In Vegas. I mean, there's Caesar's Palace and all these other things. But I don't know if I've ever heard of that one.
Okay.
Ah, yes, it was. Huh, it was a thing. It is now known as the Quad, or at least it was in 2012. Yeah, I guess for our listeners, I'm from Hawaii originally, and people from Hawaii love to go to Vegas. So between the ages of about 13 to 21, I went about once a year. So I know Vegas pretty well.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? Oh, okay.
Why do people from Hawaii love Vegas so much?
I don't
it's like
know
the polar
why.
opposite of Hawaii.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and there's so many direct flights to Vegas that are pretty cheap to get, so it's easy to go there. Yeah.
All right.
So yes, anytime I see Vegas in a movie, it wins me over just a little bit if I just see parts of Vegas that I know. Anyway, so
Okay.
Austin sneaking into there, and he's taking photos of the Vulcan, Project Vulcan files. Also, some other secret plans include what was it? Chemical
Carrot Top
dumping.
movie.
Oh, and the Carrot Top movie. Again, a '90s artifact.
Yeah.
Like, what happened to where is Carrot Top?
Who knows? Apparently, he's like shredded now. That was the last thing I heard
Wait,
about him.
what? That's weird.
I mean, like with muscles.
Yeah, that's what I assumed. That not like
Like
a
cheese.
shredded carrot.
Exactly. But he's
Anyways.
totally a product of the '90s, so I can see where they mentioned him.
A lot of vagina arrives, and then we get this seduction scene.
Yeah, we get a lot of male gaze here.
Yeah.
Like that, Sarah. I'm with it. I'm hip.
Yeah.
But during all this, he says, "Oh, groovy baby," and I laughed, and I immediately hated myself for laughing.
When, at what point did he say? I don't even remember that.
Just like at some point when she's taking off her clothes.
Oh.
Something in my lizard brain just thought it was funny.
I remember
I
he
can't
said, "Oh,
explain it.
behave," definitely during that scene. And my notes for this
Yeah.
scene are why.
Yeah.
One word for this scene.
Yeah.
Why? Why?
So the only thing that I did enjoy from this scene is that they played the song "The Look of Love," which is from the '67 Casino Royale.
So this scene, I feel like, is very James Bondy in that I feel like this scene could have been in a James Bond movie.
It is in a film. I think it's For Your Eyes Only. Yeah. Actually, no, A View to a Kill. Yeah.
But I didn't get enough of the parody part or the satire or the condemnation. It felt like it was just a sort of direct copy paste.
I'm with you on that. And there's even a line like they even make it worse because there's the line that he says, in Japan, men come first, women come second. That's actually
or not
from
at all.
Yeah, without the or not at all is from a James Bond movie. Is from You Only Live Twice, and then they added that or not at all.
Wow.
Yep. They have sex, and then we go back to the lair where we meet the Fembot, who are basically the latest in android replicant technology, apparently.
Yeah, replicants. We're gonna get Harrison Ford to come kill them if they get out of line.
Yep. And they have guns in their breasts, which then they use to kill a bunch of guards. So, are these just disposable guards that they use for a test? What's the deal?
That's right. Well, not only do they kill the guards, but the guards are helpless against them.
Mm-hmm.
The guards are ordered to kill them, but they won't do it.
Because they're attractive women, apparently.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we do have that superpower, so that jives.
All right, now go to British makeshift headquarters, which I feel like is in a hotel suite somewhere in Vegas, because there are many of those.
Mm-hmm.
And this is partially. I like this. It's partially like a Q scene where he gets some gadgets, which is just a watch which has GPS in it, or AKA what pretty much any one of us might have on our wrist right now.
Right.
And then he gets introduced into the modern, marvels of dental hygiene, which I like that he thought they were all different things. Like, oh, the floss is garrote wire and the toothpaste is plastic explosives. And it's like, no, this is just good dental care.
Yeah, I like him kind of getting knocked a little bit because he knocks plenty of other people, and he can be the butt of a joke every now and then, more directly. But also, guys, do you know the reason why a lot of British people don't have good teeth?
Why?
It's because of the national health system. they have there.
Really?
They have universal health care that covers
Yeah.
everything, but not dentistry.
Huh.
So like the rich people can get dentistry, but
Interesting.
more not rich people cannot.
Or that's the stereotype is that British people have bad teeth.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's a stereotype.
Yeah.
But that's why it exists.
Okay, interesting. Basil comes by, gives Austin an update. Austin shows Basil all the photos, and there's apparently so the plan is for an underground drill, and then they'll activate a nuke inside planet's core. And so they need to infiltrate VirtueCon. Apparently, they run a tour of VirtueCon. How many, telecommunications companies do you know that run a tour every hour?
None.
Also, this is when the more transphobic stuff.
And violence against women.
Yep. Where he meets Basil's mom, punches his mom because he thinks his mom's a man in a wig. Yeah.
And then he adds insult to injury by like insulting her. He
Yep.
says something along the lines of like, well, she is very mannish.
Ugh.
It's like, dude, learn how to freaking read a room.
Yeah.
I don't think that was okay in the 60s either. So you don't have an excuse.
And then we cut to Dr. Evil and Scott in group therapy.
I did like this.
And the therapist is played by Carrie Fisher.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. We find out some of Dr. Evil's backstory, which is very much in the same vein as Zach, if you remember when we hear Dr. No's backstory in Dr. No.
Sure. I didn't listen to it then either.
All right. Well, it's very much in the same vein.
I did like the part where Dr. Evil claims one of his relatives claimed to have invented the question
mark.
Mhm.
Sometimes he accused chestnuts of being lazy.
Well, I mean, like someone must have invented the question mark, so why not him?
I like the comedic timing when he says, like, I'm Dr. Evil, and then it sort of zooms in, and then the comedic timing of this is so perfect, and then it cuts to everyone. Hi, Dr.
Hi,
Evil.
Dr. Evil.
That was good. I like.
I also like the part where God is like, my father's trying to kill me, and Carrie Fisher's like, we don't talk that way in group, and Dr. Evil's like, no, I am trying to kill him, but he's tricky.
Yeah, he's wily like his old man. So next we go back to the hotel room. Vanessa finds out that Austin slept with Alana, and she's angry with him. But since when are they in a relationship? Like, she says a line where, like, if you want to be in a relationship, it's like, since when are they in one, though?
It's like, went on the date is the only thing I can surmise.
Maybe.
I agree. I thought that, like, maybe they cut a scene or that didn't make any sense because they weren't, I didn't think, in a relationship. The last I had heard of them was when she was drunk and Austin said no, and that to me didn't say that they were in a relationship.
Right. Yeah. Okay. See, so it's just maybe, or maybe he was trying to have one, but trying not to be himself.
Exposition didn't say at the time that Austin slept with a lot of vagina.
Yeah.
All he said was that he went to take pictures, which was his actual job.
Yeah.
So there is no reason, I wouldn't think, to get mad at someone doing their job, which is going to take pictures. Yeah. There was no implication that they got sexy in a hot tub.
Right. Well, and then Vanessa had, like, for some reason, well, not for some reason, because she knows who Austin Powers is, had, like, a nagging suspicion, and then he just sort of said, no, you're right to be suspicious. I did it. It's like, and expects there to be no consequence from that.
Because he's from the swinging 60s, yes. So I can see where she's coming from.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can see it now. The question was, for me, was the relationship line. I was like, wait, what? But yeah, so she's like, welcome to the 90s. You're going to be very lonely. And so he goes off on a sad drive. Like, he tries to make some friends in a bar, and they, like, I was like, I was sad. I felt bad for him there. When he just tried to wave hi, and they're, like, laughing at him. And then he starts making a list of all the people he knows who died. I like when he tried to put a CD in a record player.
Yeah.
Also, CDs? Good. What are those?
Yeah, CDs. Also now very antiquated. I agree.
Other 90s artifacts, the pump shoes. Remember those?
Yeah, I remember the pump shoes. Totally.
Yep.
He starts going through the last 30 years of history, like watching the moon landing, seeing the fall of the Berlin Wall. I noticed that, like, as he's doing this, there's all these cans of Tab, like, just empty cans, partially crushed all over the place. Like,
are they a 90s thing?
I feel like, though, because I feel like I haven't seen Tab in a long time.
Okay.
And apparently he was surprised that Liberace was gay. Like, that was the button on that joke.
Vanessa's face when they told her that was pretty funny. She's just like disgusted or whatever.
Okay, now we get to the VirtueCon tour, and they're wearing terrible disguises.
Which also would not
Hilarious
be okay
disguises
today, I think.
I mean, hers was fine. Her as like
Cowgirl, yeah.
Cowgirl with like rhinestone cowboy hat and all that. Okay, fine. But him, basically, was this where he got the idea for the Love Guru?
I was going to say, he looked like a character from the Love.
Anyway, so on the tour, they very helpfully point out, and there's a restricted area.
And there's bathrooms right next to the restricted area, as you do.
And there's two people who have very different body types who go into those bathrooms, and somehow Austin and Vanessa knock them out and take their clothing, and they fit perfectly. Like, I think
good joke.
The guy was like super tall, and the woman was really tiny, and no. At least the tour guide is competent enough to report them. So they failed at their job of infiltrating VirtueCon.
Well, they got in. Just not undetected.
But without any usefulness. They don't find anything useful. But this is the first time we hear Austin Powers judo chop, I think. Doesn't just do a judo chop. He says judo chop anytime he does it. Also, there's the steamroller chase.
Yeah, actually, it's called a compactor.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, excuse me.
But I did like the joke of the guy being like, no, and they're just like, get out of the way. He's like, ah.
And he's like 30 feet away still, moving very slowly.
Yeah, I did admit, I laughed at that.
Also, so as they crush the guy and they're trying to escape, and then Random Task knocks them out. I do like that name, Random Task. So Random Task takes them back to the lair, and they are given quasi-futuristic clothing, which Dr. Evil designed himself.
I liked that they had that random costume change. That they just show up in completely different, very 60s looking futuristic clothes. Like they're silver and shiny, really short skirt, really tight. And I like that there wasn't really an explanation as to why they changed. They just sort of, in the next scene, they just have different clothing. That also felt kind of Bondy.
Oh yeah, that's definitely a thing. Well, not necessarily the features, but sometimes like in Dr. No specifically, there's a scene where Dr. No has them at dinner and gives them clothing, which is like I think like Asian stylings. So it's definitely a thing.
Yeah, it is. My sister said, "What the hell?" when she saw Vanessa's outfit.
Yeah,
and it also reminds me of Mystery Men, where you have a villain from the past who like wants the past to like live again. I'm referring, of course, to the Disco Boys and their leader Casanova Frankenstein.
Never actually seen Mystery Men. Dr. Evil contacts the UN, shows off the Vulcan and what it's going to do. So it's going to drill into the mantle. They're going to activate the nuke, and it will cause every volcano on Earth to explode and melt every major city.
At this point, my boyfriend turned to me and said, "This can't happen. The nuclear weapon would explode far before it got to the core." And then he paused and said, "I don't know why I'm debating the science in this movie."
Wow.
It's a good point.
Stay tuned, because stay tuned to our fact versus fiction, spy fact versus fiction. This is also where we get Austin Powers and Vanessa like being served food at the big table with Dr. Evil, which is a very Bond thing. Like every Bond villain does this, including some of the more recent ones.
It's so funny when that happens. It makes no sense.
And then Scott enters, and I forget what Scott says that pisses off Dr. Evil. That Dr. Evil tries to use the burning chair thing on him, and Frau Verbista uses a horsewhip or whatever. What are those things called?
Riding crop
to slap his hand. Dr. Evil was going to put him in a trap, and Scott is like, "Why don't you just shoot him right now?"
Yeah, my favorite part, I think, of maybe the whole movie is when Dr. Evil says, "I'm going to explain my plot and go into a very elaborate scheme from which he can easily escape." And then the son says, "Why don't you just shoot him?" It's like, no, I have to I'm going to turn around and I'm not going to even look. Like, well, don't you want to look? Like, no. Which I think didn't that directly happen in Goldfinger? How the what's his face just turned around and didn't even look.
It happens in so many of them. Yeah.
Well, I thought it'd be like there would be like a meta joke here where Scott would be like, "Why don't you just kill him? Why don't you do this?" And then Dr. will just be like, "Because that's not the way it works."
That happens in another in like the second or third movie. It's like you just don't get it, do you?
So this also reminds me of a part from Starman, if I can have a brief interlude. So in the
Oh.
comic series Starman, there's this old cop, and he talks about how back in the 30s, he was chasing a robber down the street. They go into an alley. The robber starts to climb a fence. So the cop pulls out his gun and like fires a warning shot into the air. And the robber turns around, climbs back down the fence, walks over to the cop and is like, "What did you do that for? That's not the way it works. That's not the way we're supposed to do things." So I guess it's like a bygone era when the villain gives the hero a chance to survive, which he always takes.
Dr. Evil says, has them over this, what does he call it? The unnecessarily slow dipping mechanism.
Right.
Which is directly from Live and Let Die. Which is one of the few. So I noticed, I was taking notes on like every Bond reference. Most of them are from the Sean Connery era, but like Live and Let Die is like the only one that's from the Roger Moore era. At least in this film.
The Sean Connery era is like what people know. It's what people think of when they think of James Bond.
Depends on when you grew up. For others, it's the Roger Moore's. Oh yeah, but then so they're supposed to be over Shark Tank, but of course now sharks are an endangered species, so they couldn't get sharks. So now they have, ill-tempered mutated sea bass. And
of course, the famous line about sharks with freaking laser beams attached to their heads, which apparently everyone other than me thinks is hilarious. I also don't really get why sharks being endangered would mean some evil criminal world-destroying organization wouldn't still be able to get them.
I think it was, it's not that they couldn't. He even has the lines, like, the red tape would take months to clear up. And I think they wanted it, like, they just didn't have the time to do it.
Okay.
Oh, this is where Dr. Evil does the shh thing to Scott, which is a big thing in these movies. It's the shushes. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That people did that a lot in growing up. Yeah. The shushing.
So they close the tank. There's one inept guard there who's guarding them. Vanessa.
But I appreciated that. I'm sorry about the guard, because most James Bond villains don't leave a guard.
Well, it becomes a running gag in the rest of the movies where, Dr. Evil always leaves just one inept guard to watch them. So Vanessa has floss with her. Apparently, they let her keep the floss and toothpaste, but nothing else in that costume. Like, where was she keeping it in that costume?
Great question.
But they use the floss as a grappling hook. And then Austin judo chops the toothpaste to blind the guard. They swing across, and the guard gets his head eaten off by the mutated sea bass. Did the sea bass have lasers on their heads, or were they just sea bass?
They kind of went by too fast. Yeah. You couldn't really tell. Very cheap looking effect, but it was still kind of funny.
The James Bond one-liners after killing someone. But we get not just one, we get 4 of them.
They were okay, but I just liked how pleased what Austin was with himself after every one. Yeah.
There we go. Not a good time to lose one's head. That's no way to get ahead in life. It's a shame he wasn't more headstrong. He'll never be the head of a major corporation. At which point Vanessa says, "That's enough." Like, no, I think 1 was probably enough, but I liked them. I think my favorite is the last one because it's just so out there.
I was going to say, that's barely like a one-liner after you kill someone. That's just using the word head in a sentence.
So they drive a golf cart over to an emergency exit they find down this very narrow hallway. Vanessa leaves to get more help. And at which point he tells Vanessa that if you want me to, I'll be, a monogamist.
One-woman man baby or something like that. And then Austin tries to do what we called in Driver's Ed a K-turn.
Yep. Which now, anytime trying to get into a really tight spot, I refer to it as Austin Powersing it. Because it's just
without smacking stuff.
Yeah. But I enjoyed this. And I enjoyed that they did this and then they cut away and they cut back to him still doing it. And it's like basically parallel, like perpendicular, stuck in the wall.
Yeah, it's like, how did he do it?
We have Project Vulcan about to begin. Dr. Evil's wearing the radiation suit straight out of Dr. No. Did you notice that, Zach?
Yes, I did. And I appreciated it. He tried to do his little pinky thing and he couldn't do it because the glove was too big.
Yep. And Austin Powers is trying to find another way out. This is when he encounters the fembots. They spray these pheromones in the air and try to seduce him.
Yeah, but I guess they don't do anything because it doesn't appear to have affected him at all.
Well, it's because he has the power of love.
No, he's got his mojo, which
Or
I
that
remember from
too.
the sequels. They talk about the mojo in the sequels
Yeah.
a lot, so it's kind of funny to see.
Yeah,
it
this is the
here.
only like reference we get in this scene is the mojo. Vanessa's with a bunch of Royal Marines at the makeshift headquarters, and and she's wearing the black catsuit that her mom was wearing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at the club. It was her club outfit.
Mm-hmm. Her tactical catsuit. Yeah.
Action outfit. Yeah.
Yeah. So Austin, like you said, he's using his mojo to short circuit the fembots. So Vanessa finds him where he's with a bunch of headless. I don't know if you can tell that they're robots, but they're robots. Like, I guess you maybe could tell because their heads are exploded. There's wiring inside them, and he's just there in his underwear, and like he explains the whole situation to Vanessa, which like is actually telling the truth, and shockingly, she believes him.
So a couple of the Royal Marines here look really happy with the situation. So I was wondering what was up with that. So I was like, either they're into headless corpses of women, or they're into Austin Powers himself, which I think
it was supposed to be that the one was into Austin Powers.
Yeah, I thought that's what I took into it. So Austin Powers does his mojo dance, which seems to imply that he knew that they were robots. No?
Yeah, no. Yeah, there's no, well,
like, did I miss something where he finds out that they're robots?
Maybe the fact that they had
they're cyborgs. They have cybernetic stuff coming out.
Coming out of their breasts.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's no good explanation.
Maybe he's like, if they're human women, then they'll just be into me. But if they're robots, I gotta like turn the amplification up.
Maybe, or maybe he was just trying to, use his mojo to, I don't know, reverse the effect, and didn't know that they're robots until their head started exploding.
Yeah. So again, this scene was funny, but it goes on a little too long, just like many others.
It goes on for like an entire song.
Right.
Oh, yeah. And so back in the control center, there's a guy who's doing the announcing for everything. It's very like, I feel like Dr. No had it in a bunch of other Bond movies, especially with Blofeld, have like the one guy doing the 10 seconds and counting.
I really liked when they cut to the guy going 3, 2, 1, because we don't ever see the announcer guy in those movies, right? Like, he's just an amorphous voice.
Well, I think on her, or no, you only live twice. You do see him, but yeah, other than that, most of the time it's just a voice.
I also like the part where he like gets half his face is like charred from an
and he's
explosion.
Still there, doing the countdown.
And I seem to remember in like Flint, you also had a guy doing a countdown.
Maybe I don't remember.
But yeah, I think the reason why you don't see him is because it's like a computer is the idea, but whatever.
Anyway, so Vanessa, Austin, and the Royal Marines enter, and it's like many a scene in Bond movies of them, like the army or whoever, infiltrating a base, and there's a shootout between the good guys and the bad guys. And this is where the thing that I wanted from last week, Zach, finally happens. We get our Secret Agent Man theme song.
Guys, I loved this part. I loved it. This is my favorite part of the movie. I never realized how much I wanted to see an action scene to Secret Agent Man.
Yeah,
it's great. Die happy.
It's great. Yeah.
I also like that they just bust in and just start mowing everybody in sight down. They don't even like give them a chance to surrender or say like Dr. Evil, it's over or something like that.
Also, one of the things you notice is when Austin Powers fires his PPK, he blinks every time he shoots. And this is not a character. It wasn't a character choice. This is actually Mike Myers, like blinking because he's not used to firing guns. And then it became a character choice later on when they noticed it in this movie, once they edited together this scene. So now, from now on, anytime he fires guns, he blinks. And so they're trying to deactivate the thing. It's going down to the last second. There's a big giant red abort button, which he presses. And of course, now when he does that, the announcer is like, abort, abort, abort.
Do you think it was supposed to be like an abortion joke?
I don't think so. I just thought it was just funny that the announcer was still going.
Oh, okay.
I was surprised there was no like red wire, blue wire joke.
It's just a red button.
Yeah, that seems like such a good opportunity. Movies love lampooning that. I don't know why they didn't do that.
So Austin Powers chases after Dr. Evil. We get the, "We're not so different, you and I" speech.
Mm-hmm.
And like he goes on this about how all the things you love are now considered to be evil.
Yeah.
And this is where like
Everything.
Austin's trying so hard. He's like, if we had known the consequences of our ways, it would have been different, but the spirit would have been the same. It's freedom. And then it's like Dr. Evil was like, freedom failed. Yeah, but now we have freedom and responsibility. But the tables turn, and Alana has Vanessa at gunpoint. But then the tables turn again, and now Austin Powers has Scott at gunpoint, and it's a Mexican standoff, except that Dr. Evil doesn't care about Scott.
Yeah,
And
this
then-
is great. So funny.
Poor Scott.
And then it turns again when number 2 arrives, but he turns on Dr. Evil because he spent the last 30 years building up Verticon, and he was going to have like a profile in Forbes, but no, Dr. Evil just wanted to take over the world and ruin everything. And so he tries to make a deal with Austin Powers, but Dr. Evil kills number 2 with the chair because, okay, if you know that that's there, why would you ever sit at that table?
I was gonna say that's your own fault for sitting in that chair.
Right.
Yeah, nobody's too smart in this movie.
But Vanessa uses that distraction to knock out Alana, and Dr. Evil activates a self-destruct, which, like many Bond movies, so Dr. Evil escapes in the big boy rocket again to be frozen, and Austin drives away in the Jaguar with Vanessa.
Yeah, a couple things about that. So first, they drive away from Ayers Rock, which of course was in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey and the episode of Star Trek where Kirk fights the
Vasquez
Gorn.
Rocks, yeah.
Oh, Vasquez Rocks.
I didn't realize that was Vasquez Rocks. I didn't even recognize it.
Well, you don't get like the full, but you just see like the bottom part of it, but
Okay.
it's still recognizable.
Nice.
And then there's also a junk shot where Austin apparently can't drive his own car without hitting himself in the groin. So that was.
What it was is he flipped into the Jaguar like he did at the beginning, but this time he miscalculated the jump and landed on the shifter.
Yes.
And then we cut to 3 months later. Austin and Vanessa are married apparently.
Yep.
And they get a call from Basil Exposition, and we have the sight gag of all the naked people again.
Yes.
We found out Vanessa's been made a full agent, and that Austin will be knighted.
Was she not a full agent before? She seemed to be able to do all the
I don't know.
full agent things.
Even before, when they introduce her, they say that one of our top agents. So why isn't she a full agent? I don't know.
I don't get it.
Austin's ordered some champagne for them to celebrate, and Random Task, because we never saw him taken out, appears and with the champagne.
So is this like a thing? It's a horror movie thing. Is it a James Bond thing where just when everything looks like it's fine, a villain pops out of nowhere?
It starts with, let's see, not in Doctor No, not in From Russia with Love. Well, actually, I would say the first time you have this is From Russia with Love, where they've escaped and you think it's all fine, and then the shoe. With the shoe knife. I can remember the actual actress's name, Lotta Lenny, but I'm just trying to remember the character's name. Oh, Rosa Klebb. She appears and tries to assassinate James Bond at the very end. So that's the first time with the shoe knife. Or it happens in Diamonds Are Forever. Everyone's dispatched but the 2 henchmen, and they bring in food, posing as waiters, and try to kill James Bond. So it's a thing that happens, and it happens as more into the Roger Moore movies. It happens more and more. Pun unintended. Random Task does his shoe throwing thing and just hits Austin in the head, but doesn't decapitate him or anything. It just hurts him a lot. It's I'm gonna have a bruise there. Who throws a shoe, honestly? Which,
although that doesn't make sense, it makes a little bit more sense than the hat that was in James Bond.
Does it though?
Razor sharp thing on it.
Yeah.
It cuts people's heads off.
Yeah.
If the shoe had a spike on the end.
Or a shoe knife, maybe. I don't know.
Just a regular shoe versus a regular hat. You'd think a shoe would do more damage than a hat.
Odd Job doesn't throw a regular hat. It has a steel tip or a steel rim in it.
Okay.
Also, a hat is much more aerodynamic than a shoe.
Yes.
Ask anybody. And especially James Bond fans, because he throws his hat, right?
He does.
We talked about that. Yeah.
All good points. All good points.
Random Task is choking out Austin, and Chekhov's penis pump comes back.
Yeah, they use it to defeat him somehow.
Well, they use it to distract him, and then Vanessa hits him over the head with a champagne bottle.
Yeah, couldn't she have done that at any point? She's standing there watching the situation unfold and like,
Use this. Why?
Not ever gun with her either?
They're on their honeymoon. So they defeat Random Task, roll him back out into the hallway, and they go out onto the balcony and look at the sky, and they spot the big boy rocket with Dr. Evil in it, who's apparently cold and like freezing, but not cryogenically frozen this time, apparently because he's talking and saying, "I'll get you next time."
Yeah, he gets a taunt.
Very Dr. Claw.
Yep.
and then the very upsetting shot of the poor little kitty cat.
Who's frozen.
Yeah. Doesn't even have any hair to keep it warm.
Oh.
The poor little kitty cat.
And that is where our movie ends.
We do get some more band stuff.
Oh, yeah. Right.
During the end credits.
I do like that.
Not much to say about that.
Song. I like the song that Mike Myers does with that band, BBC.
We liked it too.
I liked the BBC song more than the groovy interludes.
Fair. All right, so shall we go into Spy Fact versus Spy Fiction?
By all means.
I'm very excited for this segment.
There's not a lot. I just want to talk about sort of the inspiration for this. Obviously, it's James Bond, but Mike Myers has actually stated in interviews that his idea for Austin Powers came to him one night when I was driving, and he heard the song "The Look of Love," which was featured in the movie, on the radio, and he wonders, where have all the swingers gone? And use that to conceive this idea.
So the spy thing is like almost besides the point. So
well, I think it's also because The Look of Love is from Casino Royale, and it was that plus his just sort of wanting to do a comedy thing and wanting to do a James Bond parody, because his dad is like, well, so he's born in Canada, but both his parents were from the UK, and so James Bond was a big part of his life.
I get inspiration can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I was like, when we were watching this, Carolyn was like, would Dr. Evil know what Lucky Charms is? Because he was frozen in 1967. But turns out, first Lucky Charms, debuted 1964. So we had 3 years to know about Lucky Charms.
But what about the jingle?
I wasn't able to find out when the "They're Always After Me" Lucky Charms catchphrase came out.
Okay, so here's the theory.
Yeah.
All right. He got Lucky Charms. He loved it. And when he got back in the 90s, the first thing he did was looked up Lucky Charms and had a ball of it.
Sure.
Zach,
now I want Lucky Charms.
Zach, I fully appreciate the way that you back script all the things to make sense, like with the bathroom stall and with the Lucky Charms. Like you figured out how it can make sense.
I need the world to make sense. I need things to make sense.
It was really hard in the moment not to go, they're magically delicious, to no one when I saw.
All right, so the other thing I have one of the other things I have is about Burt Bacharach. So like I said before, he wrote the song "The Look of Love," which was in the original Casino Royale, and he appeared in this movie. And as of recording, he is still alive at 92 years old. Actually, by the time this comes out, he may be 93.
Hopefully he's still alive.
Yeah. But the one thing that happened for actual spy fact versus spy fiction, I looked up what would happen if you dropped a nuclear bomb into a volcano.
Okay.
Apparently nothing.
Really? Nothing?
Yeah. So this is according to IFL Science. They said that dropping a bomb, even a nuclear bomb, into a bubbling cauldron of magma would be very anticlimactic. The bomb would melt without starting a nuclear reaction.
Obviously, if you drop a bomb and then set it off in a volcano, which is what Dr. Evil was going to do.
Okay. Nuclear bomb is made of explosives and a radioactive core. To ignite a devastating reaction, the explosives all need to detonate under careful timing to create enough energy to start a nuclear reaction. Right.
I didn't think that he was going to drop it in a volcano. I thought he was going to drill it into the earth and then set it off at the Earth's core. Wasn't that what he said?
Yes.
But the Earth's core is full of magma, so it's like a volcano.
Yeah.
Same conditions.
But you can't get it to the Earth's core. There's a problem with that plan.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
So in order to start this reaction, you would need to be the bomb would need to be detonated above the volcano's mouth or magically transported into the magma chamber center, but you can't get it into there. So this plan would not work.
All right. I'm very relieved to hear that.
All right, shall we move into our favorite quotes?
Sure. Sarah, do you want to go first as our guest star?
Sure. Guest star. Yeah, that's me. So my favorite parts of the movie were the direct parodies of Bond. And my favorite instance of that was when Dr. Evil is sort of letting Austin Powers into this elaborate trap and then doing nothing. So when Dr. Evil says, I'm going to place him in an easily escapable situation involving an overly elaborate and exotic death, is my favorite quote. I also appreciate when Scott, his son, subsequently says, we can shoot them together. It'll be fun. Bang.
Yeah, we got to see a little bit of villainy in Scott, too. The evil isn't just in a name.
So my favorite is from number 2, from around the same period. Well, I think it's a little bit later in the movie, but he's like, I was going to have a profile in force. You, like an idiot, wanted to take over the world. And you don't realize there is no more world. It's only corporations.
Strikes a little close to home.
I mean, I also appreciate it. Like, I really like the Bond one-liners, all 4 of them. But I've already said them, so
right.
Yeah.
And I have 2. I have when Will Ferrell dies. He says, "I'm still alive, but very badly burned." And then also the part with the fembots, where the fembots do their thing, and then Dr. Evil says, "I like to see girls of that caliber."
Oh yeah, the caliber. Yeah.
But then he goes and explains it and ruins it.
I like that. I liked what he explained. It's a homonym.
Yeah, I like the caliber.
Right.
I agree with you, Zach. Yeah.
Okay, so now is the part we've all been waiting for, which is our ratings on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 being a horrible, terrible spy movie, and 10 being the best spy movie you've ever seen. How do you guys rate Austin Powers 1, International Man of Mystery?
All right. Sarah, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think that there is a solid 15 minutes of excellent James Bond parody, and the remaining 80 minutes that are left are jokes that I don't necessarily appreciate, or just sort of straight up womanizing. So, but if we take that 15 minutes, I think that would be great. So I give it a 3 out of 10 martini.
All right. Zach, you want to go next?
This movie is difficult to rate. So there's a lot of things that I didn't like the very obvious sexism. But there were a lot of jokes that I laughed at, whether I hated myself for laughing at them or not. There's a lot of stuff to like. There's a lot of stuff to dislike. It's hard to rate. I will give it a 5 out of 10 because it ends up kind of somewhere in the middle for me.
So I do enjoy this movie mainly for its parody. And I think I'm going to take a more generous opinion. I think there's more than 15 minutes of good parody in it. And although I will say this is not my favorite Austin Powers movie, I really like the third one actually. But there's time travel involved, and they go to the 70s and also modern day. So this didn't really fit into our retrospective, and maybe we'll cover it at a later date. But being a fan of the Bond films, I enjoy the parodies of it, and I think it does a good thing where it's not just parodies. It tries to be a little, its own thing. Like he's not, even though they do parodies of Bond, the character, like the whole thing with the bad teeth and everything, there's like more beyond just being like a carbon copy Bond copy. So I appreciated that. But also, yeah, obviously there's a lot of problems with the way it treats women. So I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10. Yeah,
that's a good point. I feel like Flint is much more like an analog of Bond than Austin Powers was.
Oh yeah, so we talked about it like I guess 2 weeks ago in Like Flint, where I mentioned that there was a reason I specifically picked In Like Flint as opposed to Our Man Flint, and I thought it was in this movie, but apparently it's in the next movie. In like the first 5 minutes of the next movie, Austin Powers is watching In Like Flint and says it's my favorite movie.
Oh,
I see.
Yeah.
So you can see where they got their ideas from.
There's a lot of influence from there, yeah. All right, well, thanks for joining us, Sarah, on your second time on the podcast. Where can people find you?
Thanks very much for having me. You can find me on Twitter at SarahIsActually for geekitude and feminist propaganda.
Yeah, and thank you, all of our guests, for joining us. You can find us on social media at the Spy-Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Until next time, I'm Christian.
And I'm Zach.
And we are the Spy-Fi Guys, signing off. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed our podcast, please be sure to rate and review us on iTunes. The theme music is by Jer Fitzgerald and Big Man Joe. Media reviewed by our podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended.
This is a personal podcast. Any views, statements, or opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the participants. They do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the participants may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated. Any views or opinions are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, or individual.
You can find our podcast on social media at the Spy Fi Guys on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.